out to go wandering along the mountain track. And as I go, I'm out to sing my knapsack on my back. Marie,
Woods and Waters with your host, Bud Levitt.
Yo-ho, and I'm glad you're out there because I'm glad to be here. Well, we took a little winter vacation, and some of you were kind enough to say that we were missed. In fact, only a few minutes ago, I was at the airport, and a man came up and tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, when are you going to have Woods and Waters again? And I looked at my watch, and I said, in exactly 1 hour and 23 minutes. I'm on my way there right now. He said, I'm going to hurry home. Well, we're going to have a call-in tonight, 1 hour, in fact, and you'll have an opportunity to really ask some questions about fishing. Now, you can ask questions about fishing in Maine, or you can ask about fishing in the province of New Brunswick. My program guest tonight, Peter Norris here of Nickatowis Lake on my right, and on my left is Alex Mills, who is down from Doketown, New Brunswick, on the banks of the Miramichi River. These people have been in the outfitting, camping business, or the professional camping business for a long time. The Norris family for half a century. The name has been synonymous with sporting camps in Maine. The Mills, meaning Alex and his wife, Vicky, have been right in the forefront of conservation programs with respect to the Atlantic salmon. Up in New Brunswick and wherever there's need for help, they've always been on hand. And I'm delighted to have them here tonight for reasons that I know that you're going to be better informed about Maine fishing when we get through here. And you'll have an opportunity to call in and ask your own questions of either one of these men. And if we can't answer it, we'll simply say that we cannot answer it. But it's going to be an interesting year because it's been an unusual spring thus far. Only today I did some checking to find out where the ice is out. I can't repeat on public television exactly some of the answers, but the ice has not been out. I was also talking to people today just arriving from Florida. Some had planned to go to Chamberlain Lake this weekend, hopeful of fishing. I think I nixed that this morning while having a cup of coffee. It's been a very late spring. Perhaps the big news thus far has been the opening of the Atlantic salmon fishing in our main rivers, and principally and notably the Penobscot River, where perhaps 50 or 60 fish thus far have been taken on the rod, most released. My good friend, the professor from the University of Maine, Claude Westfall, caught a beautiful 9.5-pounder, beautiful, beautiful silvery fish, and it's being iced and ultimately will be delivered to President Bush, perhaps at Kennebunk a bit later in the year, perhaps Memorial Weekend. But all told, it's been a very slow season. The brooks and streams have been quite good for the people who have gone brook fishing. People fishing the small brooks have reported that occasionally they picked up one fish, two fish, and it's worked out all right. But thus far, we're at least a month behind schedule. And under those conditions, where we can talk about what we might expect down the road from either one of these two men. Peter, good to have you here.
Thank you, Bud. Appreciate it.
How are things in Nickatowis?
Well, I think like you said, we could count the sunny days on one hand, and for a camp operator, it's very difficult. You know, there's just so many times when you need the sun to crawl under a camp and put pipes together and drain this and fix that, and when it's 40 degrees and 30 degrees, it makes it very difficult.
Have you had to turn people back thus far?
No. Well, people, I think, with our particular situation are a little more cautious because we're not in northern Maine, and I think that they can call us. A lot of places they can't reach, they can reach us, and if there's any question about the ice being out, the ice just went out a little over a week ago, which is probably a week later than normal. And we haven't had to turn anybody away, but a combination of hard winter on the road into camp, the 7 miles of dirt road, and it's very rough, has stopped people. And I've been in the wrecker business for the last couple of weeks. It's unbelievable. I mean, I've had 2 guys, just a guy yesterday that walked 12 miles. This time he says that his wife lost the keys to the truck when they were out fishing on Duck Lake. I assume that's true, but he walked down and had to call on our telephone to have a friend go from Ellsworth all the way back up through and bring the keys, and he took my truck and brought it back this morning, and we've been pulling people out. I mean, it's just no sun means mud. And
Is the frost out of the ground,
Well, the frost is out in most places, but where there's shelter with the the softwood trees on some of the roads, you can just get into a quagmire without even realizing it. It can be nice and dry for half a mile, and all of a sudden, boom, you're right down to the axles. And we've had a lot of it.
Alex, what have conditions been on the Miramichi?
Very similar to what Peter has said, Bud. The spring was late. Cold, snowed yesterday.
We you get yesterday. I heard that in the air last night, and I said, I hope Alex Mills is not marooned and unable to get down.
We've had worse this winter, but there was a sprinkling, and it's been like that for the last week. Prior to that, I mean, we just had a very late spring, and it's interesting to hear your problems, because our problems with getting camps ready and ensuring that pipes aren't frozen and getting things operational from the winter is just that much harder because of the late spring. Usually you're expecting, things will be in a certain state come the 1st of April, and they just weren't this year, so that slowed things down. Fortunately, we didn't have to turn anybody away. The ice was late leaving the river this year as well, about a week, 10 days late. Some people had to cancel their first guests during our spring season, but we were fortunate we got started a little bit later. So we really didn't lose anybody. Fishing was slow because of the cold water and that kind of thing, but it's picked up. Generally, we seem to be getting to where we should be for the season. So.
You're a lawyer by profession. I mean, it's all right to even admit it publicly, but how does a lawyer find time to practice law, and get pipes going, water going into the operation with that limited time you have?
I have no idea, but I don't know. But we get it done. I've got good people working, and you mentioned wives earlier. I'm very pleased with the help and the participation and everything from my wife Vicki, who we've met. So between us, we're able to do it. But it does take a lot of hours. It takes a lot of time.
Before you ever went in the camp business, did you ever imagine there was this much work attendant to it?
No.
Never did.
It was all a very romantic, idealistic notion. The day before I actually took possession, and found out very quickly, to the contrary, that there were a lot of the job required or the business required getting your hands very dirty, being ready to respond to a lot of different situations, both from the point of view of maintenance and emergencies and the unexpected with guests and the works. So a lot of surprises. Certainly enjoyable, though. It's,
really?
Yeah, very much.
What moved you to get into the camp business along with your profession?
That's a good question. I really think I had a romantic notion of what the business was about. I always maintain, referring to New Brunswick, that if you scratch a hunter or a fisherman in New Brunswick, you're going to find somebody who is or fancies that they're a guide, and if you scratch a guide, you're going to find somebody who is or wants to be an outfitter. And I'm probably no different than a lot of people in New Brunswick who were in that situation. I was practicing law in my hometown and got frustrated with it, and there was an opportunity, and I mortgaged my soul, and here I am 15 years later. So,
Peter, the Norris family, for well over a half a century, from your great dad and your mother and so forth, give me a rundown where you all are at these days.
Well, I don't know how long this show is, but if I add everything in, you probably won't have time for it.
No, I mean your brothers and your sisters.
I will say this much. Recently, my brother Steve, who was at kidney pond camps with my father for several years, he searched over the state high and low. And finally, he and his wife drove into a place and said, you know what's going to happen? They just happened to see the sign. They said, we're going to go in this place, and we're going to fall in love with it, and it's not going to be for sale. And that's exactly what happened. They went into a place called the Pines, the Norway Pines on Sisla Lake. And ironically, that was the case. And they just made up their mind that they were going to have this place one way or another. And it happened that the ingredients were right, and they were patient. It took over a year. And finally, on the 30th of April, they bought the place. And I took him his first pair of work boots yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah, I said, those wingtips won't do out here. There's too much mud. But history-wise, my father was a guide when I was a child, and he worked in the paper company as a machinist in a paper mill. And when he was 52 years old back in '68, he just left it all. There were still 4 or 5 of us kids at home, and he went and got Kidney Pond camps. And then we got Red River camps, my wife and I, in '72. My sister Charlene in '73 or '4 got Weatherby's over in Grand Lake Stream. My sister Betsy had a place called Camps of Arcadia in Eagle Lake. And then we each left a couple places. Things changed, and my wife and I again now are back at Nicotowis Lodge. My sister Betsy, who was at Eagle Lake, is now at Winnicook Lake at a place called Ferguson's in Unity. And Charlene is still at Weatherby's, and Steve is now at Sisla. And my mother is still scratching her head, and she's at Sisla with my brother.
Really?
At 77 years old. Sorry, Ma.
You pretty much have the state surrounded. You're going to run into a Norris at a camp.
Well, I find it intriguing that in New Brunswick, along with a lot of other different arrangements that they have, that we are always faulted for talking a lot, obviously, and we aren't really getting paid for it, like lawyers get paid for it. So maybe I should tell my son he should go to law school, and then that'll augment the sporting camp business. But all kidding aside, there's been a lot of jokes about lawyers and sporting camps and so forth. And I think we'll leave them there.
Well, I know your wife, Chris, is a lawsuit. She's a California girl. And I know she just got out of a hot tub while she's watching this program. Hopefully she's out of it right now.
There goes my ride home right there.
Really? But tell me about Chris, the first time you took her in the woods. I mean at a sporting camp.
Well, I think you asked me this back in '78 when you did a show up at our first camp.
Yeah,
and
Red River.
I remember it as clear as if it was yesterday, and I said the most amazing thing to me is that she was from Los Angeles, and she came into the woods and was totally at ease, totally at home. Oh, you know, a little nervous sometimes with critters running around, but basically just fell in love with it. Whereas for myself, when I went to LA, I had a depression right off the bat. You know, the concrete and the telephone poles and walls between houses. I'm just a little Maine boy, and that. So I think basically she, maybe it was what she wanted. LA was not what I wanted. You know, so obviously she adapted very quickly. And after she learned how to cook a little bit, why, things got crazy.
Yeah, she can cook a little bit, all right. Tell me about the day schedule. Say the hunting season. You got 20, 25 hunters in. What's her day schedule of work?
Well, of course, it's changed a bit now, I will say, because our children have grown up.
Yeah.
They both are away at school. That used to complicate things quite a bit. But now we get up around 3:30 in the morning. And we serve breakfast at 5 usually, because daybreak is at 6. And in the process of 3 to 3:30, all the home fries, all the goodies, the donuts, everything has to be done, you know. And she just keeps me hopping from one side of the kitchen to the other, and in and out, and the coffee. And I know at our first camp, when we didn't have the right kind of power, we had to make like 120 cups of coffee with those poppers, you know, and it was crazy. So she's very, very busy. And then she shot out of cooks. You know, everybody gets what they want. And it's just a long day. But she's often said she enjoys that more than in the fishing season, because when the hunters go out, she does get a few hours in the midday towards the afternoon to kick back and get outside and regroup. But it's a long day, really.
But here comes 20 or 25 hunters after a day, like your people coming off the river. They're hungry. So come supper time or dinner time, whatever. And then the next day, she's got to prepare lunches for 20 to 24, 25 hunters.
Oh, it's unreal. It's, you know, we've talked about numbers and the amount of food that people put away, you know, especially that fresh air. You know how it is. You get out by a campfire and it's unreal what you can eat. And obviously home cooking, which people are not used to sometimes, the homemade biscuits and all the goodies and the desserts, all made right there. And she makes them all. It's tremendous. But the thing is that it's almost like a man walking to a woodpile, just to give men a little bit of side here. And and you look at the wood, and after you've beat on it for quite a long time, you know how to line it up and get the grain a little bit better, so that she's learned an awful lot of tricks from a lot of camp cooks and other camp owners that shorten her work a great deal. It doesn't take it away, but knowing the tricks of the trade is a big, big help in experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she just really plugs. Never gets ornery, though.
Never, she doesn't.
No, that's one of the things about a sporting camp owner's wife, right?
Chris, he's trying to make time with you right now. Alex, a lot has been said about the new regulations with respect to our friends in Newfoundland. As I understand it, they've paid off and commercial fishing has been reduced to practically zero.
Mm-hmm.
What is this going to mean for Atlantic salmon fishing for the province and the state of Maine?
Right. Well, it's obviously a boom. The exact numbers, I don't think we'll know until after the season is over. But unquestionably, it's going to put fish in all the Atlantic salmon rivers on the eastern seaboard this summer. One forecast is that for the Miramichi alone, that we may expect to see an increase of approximately 30,000 grilse and 12,000 salmon.
Really?
In Miramichi alone. Now, as you probably know, Bud, the forecasting for Atlantic salmon is not
Precarious business.
it's not as precise as it should be. Although certainly there are some aspects of it which they do have nailed down fairly well. But the biologists are always hedging their bets one way or the other, or couching their statements with one qualifier or another. But certainly the net effect is going to be positive, and it'll be interesting to see whether those kinds of numbers materialize this summer. For sure, over the next 4 or 5 years, we're looking at a dramatic increase in returns of fish. Again, as you may know, there are some other considerations that you have to look at when you are forecasting. There's some concern about ocean temperatures not being what they should be. There's still concern about Greenland, a big issue that is being addressed on an ongoing basis. But generally, things are optimistic. I'm quite pleased with this Newfoundland announcement.
The general regulations, other than Atlantic salmon, has the province made any marked changes in their regulations with respect to, for example, bass fishing has suddenly grown rapidly all through the province, interest in it. More people are doing it. That great flowage of the St. John and so forth.
Yeah. Well, I don't participate in bass fishing myself. My understanding is basically the regulations.
You have never caught bass?
No, I don't take bass fishermen. Right? I have caught bass, and very proud to admit it. Not until late in life, a few years ago, but I very much enjoy bass fishing. In fact, Bill Enzer, our tourism rep for the province of New Brunswick, and I are scheduled to do some bass fishing sometime in the next month. So,
are you really?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
I might tell you that Bill is with Bill Bryan tonight over in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and they're probably right there checking up on you right now. What's your outlook for the season?
Fish-wise?
Well,
or generally?
Business-wise?
Fish-wise, again, I guess the forecasts are certainly positive. On the Miramichi, we had approximately 100,000 fish last year. So, again, we're expecting that we'll hit that number and more this year. Business-wise, it's down. Up and down the river, things are off from probably a high of 2 years ago. Last year was down somewhat, and we're on about at the same par as last year, and I expect probably most camps are in somewhat the same situation. Everybody liked to think that we were perhaps recession-proof, but it certainly seems as if that's a factor. A number of different things at play, I think, in assessing where our business stands. All this The attention that Russia is getting, I think, is a big consideration.
Really?
Yeah, we see people.
Have you literally lost some clients that are going to Russia this year salmon fishing?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't say a large number, but
No.
you know, you talk to guests and or people who would consider the Miramichi, and they say, no, I just booked to fish the Pinoy or some other exotic river. So yeah, we're very much subject to what's happening in places as far away as Russia. But
You know, Ted Williams and Bobby Knight went over there last year, and that's all I've heard is Russia.
oh, is that right?
I guess it was an unbelievable experience with respect to salmon fishing. Well, we'd be glad to take some of your questions. The numbers, the telephone number's been on the board. If you have a question that you'd like to ask either one of these men, why, don't hesitate to call in, and they'd be delighted to answer your question. Peter, what do you think of pike in Nicotawas?
Well,
I never expected that question.
I'm not surprised at all anymore. You know, I mean, we went from the northern Maine, strictly salmon and trout, down here to central Maine, where bass really is becoming king, if it isn't already, and the appreciation for bass is getting higher. Personally, I think the white perch, if you're going to have an eating fish out of fresh water, is probably the best one that I can think of. As far as pike go, we call our trout at Nicotawas, we have Nicotawas trout, and they have a long snout and they have a lot of teeth in the front of their body, and they're better known as pickerel, but they're very obliging and very capable of putting up a fight, and I think that's what's happened with me over the last 20 years, you know, in becoming more realistic, not fatalistic about cold water species, but we all know how difficult it is and how trying it is to try to keep the populations up, and I'm just hopeful that the Fish and Game Department and the people realize that when people come to our camp, they want to catch a fish, especially a kid. They don't really care what kind of fish that is. Now, we're not talking about Atlantic salmon here. We're talking about a family, a little fellow that just wants to catch a fish. He may not have the opportunity where he's at. And so pike or bass or whatever it might be, my game is for them to just enjoy themselves. And I recall last summer when you were up and your granddaughter was there, and the thrill, thrill in her eye, you know, as I caught that rod as it went over the side of the boat.
That's right.
What a story. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
it was a 4 or 5 pound bass, and her eyes were the size of saucers, you know.
Well, so was mine. It was my rod.
Yeah, well, we caught it.
Coyotes.
He said you'd ask about coyotes.
At least when you asked me this time, but I don't have smoke in my eyes. The last time you asked me that, we were sitting by a campfire in northern Maine, and I said, this is the way a campfire is supposed to be, with smoke in your eyes. But I truly believe, and I am not a biologist, so I can only go on my experience day by day. I don't see very many of them. I know they're there. I know that they do kill some deer. My major response to the coyotes is what they've done to the deer's reaction. You know, you jumped a deer 10 years ago, and if you were quiet and you tippy-toed up, you might get to see that deer. He'd be looking back at you. It seems like now, if a twig snaps, those deer are gone, and they just don't stop. And if you start tracking one, it seems like he goes on, and he goes right out of his territory. You know, they're supposed to have a mile square territory, but he doesn't stop. And
Come in, Van Gogh, with your question.
Yes, I would like to ask about the fish. I mean, a lot of fishing going on is starting on, and because they've been in the newspapers about the mercury, the level of mercury and the different types of fish. I was just wondering which fish is more likely to have the higher content of mercury.
That's a tough question. I haven't heard that addressed on which fish is apt to have the highest content of mercury. I think you've stuck us.
obviously, it's a factor, you know.
Yeah, obviously it's a factor. Can't answer you.
And like I said, my other question is on the salmon part where they said that they stopped the offshore fishing.
Yes.
And where he's saying so much salmon is coming up in the stream, if they're going to extend the limit on the salmon that you can catch with a pole.
Okay, I can answer that for you. There'll be no change in the regulations this year. Again, when that Newfoundland hatchery, or that Newfoundland bunch of fish supposedly come down the eastern shore of the United States, supposedly coming into the main rivers, I would guess that the Salmon Commission would look back at the rules next year before they post new rules. But the one fish limit still holds.
Okay, thank
All right.
you. I'm still watching.
Thank you.
If anybody's got any questions on that, maybe on a following show they could, come up with
Yeah.
some answers to that.
All right, it's a
mercury.
good point on that mercury.
Okay.
Sorry I
You.
can't help you.
All right.
All right, your question.
Yes.
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Ellsworth.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Mrs. Dyer, and I was just wanted to call and let Peter know that I am the gentleman's wife that he helped out this morning, and I'm ever so grateful that he let my husband use his truck so that my son and I wouldn't have to spend the night in the camp. My 2-year-old son and I wouldn't have to spend the night in the camper alone
Oh, boy.
because I lost the truck keys overboard in Duck Lake.
I just mailed the bill to you. I think it's Peter handed it to me. Well, that's good. I mean, one of the things I've always noted, camp operators, outfitters, guides, in an emergency, they're always willing.
Well, I just want to thank him ever so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'll never forget that fishing trip. Thank you very much, sir.
You're very welcome.
All right, bye-bye.
Come in. Where are you calling from?
This is Sanford, Maine.
Sanford. All right, your question.
My question is the ice out at Nicotawas right now in that area?
Well, we have the man that can answer that. He lives there.
Yeah, the ice is out. It went out about a week ago or a little better, and we don't have much for experience. There are some fish being caught, West Lake and Duck Lake. I'm not sure on Nicotawas because lots of times the early fishermen go in on the lower end of the lake, the south end, opposite of ours. Our guests will start coming in the next week or two, but the water's low. We didn't have much snow this winter, especially bare ground in January was, terrible, and February just can't make up for that. And I think we're going to see, unless we get a lot of rain, which I don't want to forecast after this lousy spring, that we're going to see some low water levels.
New Gloucester, come in with your question.
Hello?
Yes.
I'm from New Gloucester,
Yes,
and
sir.
I would like I have a question for the gentleman from New Brunswick.
Yes, sir.
I fished the northwest branch of the Miramichi last summer, and one of the major problems that we had is that the Indians were gill netting the river, and I wondered if the province of New Brunswick has any intent to do anything about it, or what the situation is with it now.
I actually should have mentioned that issue when you were asking me earlier, Bud, about the summer. That gill netting on the Northwest Miramichi was a serious problem last year, and there have been a number of organizations that have been working very, very hard with government and with the Native community to try and get that situation under control. And at this point in time, I wish that somebody could say to us, or I could say to the gentleman who's calling, that the matter is under control for this summer. There is certainly a lot of pressure being put on the reserves, and the leaders and the chief and the band council on those two reserves on the Northwest are certainly committed to controlling the fishery, to converting that net fishery to something which is more conservation oriented and more of more economic benefit. So it's in the works. At this point in time, unfortunately, I cannot say that the problem is going to be resolved for this summer. Interestingly though, I am convinced from the work that we've been doing over the last 6 or 7 months that the problem will be resolved. I certainly hope that people don't despair with the Northwest, with New Brunswick generally, while this is getting resolved. I think we've got a lot of hard talking to do between government, ourselves, and Native leaders, and this is something which your viewers probably wouldn't be aware of. It's all connected to an effort to try and find some constitutional peace in Canada these days, which complicates the fisheries issues. But in any case, I'm 100% confident that a year, 2, 3 years, that it will be resolved. The Native community, they want a larger share of the salmon resource. I personally feel they're entitled to a larger share. I don't feel that they're entitled to put gill nets in the river. But I certainly feel that they are entitled to a much larger stake in the Atlantic salmon fishery. And again, that is a fairly widespread thought or position amongst conservation groups, and the leadership in the Native community is responsible. They readily admit that they have people on the reserves who they can't control, and they see that as something that they've got to come to grips with. But all of the players are moving in the direction to rationalizing that native fishery. So,
Good.
yeah.
Let's go now to Worcester County in Washburn. Come in.
Bud, Jim Carter here.
Hi, Jimmy. How are you?
Punch that fellow on your right. I've spent a lot of time with him.
You know Pete Norris.
Yeah, Bud. I've found in the headwaters of Aroostook this year, I think it's 13 or 14 dead deer. One of the things that the powers to be in Augusta might allow us is to take a little poke at them on Sundays when we're ice fishing. We usually try to, but you got to kind of look over your shoulder.
Well, you know, Jim, we have laws, as you well know.
I'm not sure Jim does now. Be careful. How you doing, Jim?
Fine, Pete. No, I really think that possibly in another term of legislature to allow people to hunt on Sunday during the January, February, and March, we'd get a few more of these. They are killing a lot of deer.
You are talking about coyotes alone. Just
Coyotes alone.
All right. Good to talk to you, and stay healthy.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
Come in, and where are you calling from? Hello?
Hello,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm calling from Bangor.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm calling because I was going to make a comment on coyotes. I feel like coyotes are blamed for a lot more than they are really do. Coyotes are more into small animals like rabbits and mice and rats. Everybody wants to blame it on the coyote. I agree that they have grown in numbers, but basically they don't like to get larger game. I have to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
That's a difficult question.
You don't want to differ with her, do you, bud?
Oh, I don't disagree with her wholly. I'll tell you very honestly, I don't think we can do anything about the coyote situation.
Well, you know, nature is nature. And
Nature is
I
nature, exactly right. I mean, and they're compatible in other places, Michigan, the northern states with the white-tailed deer. But I'll take your next question. Where are you calling from?
Hi, Bud. My name is Ed Arsenal from Scarborough. Originally
Hi, Ed. How are you?
Good. Originally from Mexico, and I knew Mr. Norris back when I was in high school.
That long ago?
Yeah. I got a question for you. I fish a lot in the Kennebago River up in the Rangeley area.
Mm-hmm.
And in the new law books this year, they've come out with this 10-inch trout in Kennebago Lake. Well, they also changed the limit on Kennebago River to 5 fish from 1 fish. I just wonder if that's going to continue or if that was a mistake.
That was not a mistake, I can assure you. That was part of the laws this year for the tightening up, hopeful of preserving some of the wild fish.
No, what it was is that the limit in Kennebago River has always been 1 fish, and they changed it to 5.
5, that's correct.
It's going to stay 5.
Mm-hmm. This year, at least.
Okay.
All right?
Thanks a lot, bud.
You bet. Come in with your question. Where are you calling from?
Old Town.
Old Town. Best city in the East. What's your question?
Well, it's for either Peter or you, but
All right.
I was wondering what area of the state has some of the better brook trout fishing?
Well, there's a couple hatcheries up near...
Enfield.
No, there's brook trout fishing, but...
You bet. Yeah. Even with poor conditions this spring, I can honestly face you and tell you I have talked to 15 or 20 different people who have said that they've come off the brooks with pretty exceptional cases. I know of a single catch of a young man from Franklin who took 2 brookies, 12 and 13 inches out of a stream that could not possibly more than be wider than 8 feet at crest. So yes, they're getting fish.
The answer, though, about regions, Bud, is that obviously access has changed the
Indeed.
the fishing.
Indeed.
And if you're going to look for some good brook trout fishing, you really got to go back. You're going to have to get away from the roads as much as possible. Little trout ponds that used to be good fishing are now being heavily hit. My answer to that question would be that you better look to the far reaches and try not to tell anybody about it, and that's where you're going to find more of your fishing. The St. John, I know people go up there and fish that early and have good luck on the St. John Fishway, but it's got to be remote.
Come in. Where are you calling from?
Whitneyville.
Whitneyville. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Bud, hi.
I'm good.
I was wondering if what you thought about this new limit on the trout.
Well, you know, we could discuss this all night long. My feeling is this: the only possible way we can continue to have fishing is a general tightening of the laws. The days.
I can understand that, sir, but what I'm trying to say is down here in Washington County, if I want to go and get a mess of trout for the family, see, I don't go for a sport. I go put some food on the table. And I was wondering if...
I know that, and you are being penalized, and I agree with that, but...
yeah, but what I'm trying to say is I think Commissioner Vail is trying to make poachers out of us when we have to walk 2.5 miles into the woods to our secret fishing hole and only bring out 5, 6 to 8 inch trout.
It's a tough question. To satisfy, it's like the duck season. You know, it freezes over north of here very early in the year. It's open the southern part of the state, let's say, in the days when we didn't have the zone set up. To satisfy everyone with the waterfowl hunting season was a tough chore. I want to ask you a question. Coyotes in New Brunswick. You're not going to escape this. Hang on a minute. We'll be right with you.
Well, they're there.
Increasing numbers?
In some areas, but interestingly enough, decreasing fairly significantly in other numbers. Someone had said that the pattern was that when they moved into an area, there was kind of an explosion and then a drop with a leveling off. And I think we're seeing that in some parts of the province. There's still, I think it's safe to say that during the late February, March, when the deer are yarded up and the snow is deep at home, that they are doing some damage to our deer. That seems to be a conclusion which our biologists are reluctantly reaching.
Now admitting.
Yeah. There's a fairly, I unfortunately wasn't able to make it, but there was a fairly good symposium at Fredericton last fall on the eastern coyote, and there was a fair bit of talk and discussion on a stomach analysis that had been done during that period, which showed a fair bit of deer in the diet of the coyote. Now, you know, whether they are feeding on dead deer or actually in on the kills is another matter, although there's some other independent evidence there. Aside from that period, I probably agree with what Peter's saying. Now, whether, you know, because of our climate, which, and you know that we're pretty close to the northern extreme of the deer habitat. Of course, you probably are here too, northern Maine at least. But whether that combination, together with our winters and the presence of coyotes, make our deer more vulnerable or more susceptible or not, I'm not sure. But that's about the only time when there is any threat. Aside from that, I don't think there's a lot of damage being done. The province has looked at problem areas and is in the slow, methodical way of bureaucrats, accent on slow, are looking at how to address some problem areas for next winter. So hopefully there may be some initiatives.
Caller from Dedham, are you still there?
I'm here.
All right, your question.
This is a question to the fellow that owns Nicotowers Lodge.
Yes, sir.
Just kind of curious if he's been down back where the old dump used to be, and if he's walked the banks in the last 10 or 15 years where you used to be able to find does having lambs, and now all, you know, that's all you saw down there, and now all of a sudden all you find down there is coyote tracks.
Well,
just curious
you know, that's obviously I don't know how much the coyote has impacted. There's so many things that have changed the deer and their survival abilities. Forest cutting practices come to mind real quickly, and the winters, depending on the winters. I'm not one of those people that has jumped on the coyote bandwagon. I guess because I believe in nature and I believe in cycles, but I think that what happens is that somehow we get it in our mind that we have to have X number percent of the deer, you know, and it's grown and grown and grown, and if we're supposed to have 95% and then everything else shares 5%, I'm not saying that the coyotes aren't taking some of the young and some of the weak and some of the strong. We've had carcasses on the ice, But I guess I'm just a guy that believes in nature and cycles of things, and it hurts my business if they kill deer. But on the other hand, that's part of nature.
Bango, your question.
Yeah, so I'm calling about. I'm glad that the gentlemen here are able to have hunting lodges and keep it available for people.
Mm-hmm.
But since the Karen Wood incident with the posted land, a lot of people in the state of Maine, well, we can't afford to go to a hunting camp, go up to Nick Towers Lake and spend a week. We're out. We're trying.
Well, what's your question?
We're trying to put. What can we do about getting some land locally?
You're talking about public access.
Yeah, public access for hunting. Not just we have public access land, but it's protected for wildlife such as deer, duck, and other things. But you're not in hiking, but we're not allowed to hunt on it. Around the Bangor Brewer area, there's some nice farmland that is just absolutely beautiful for deer hunting, and it's prime. It's always been prime, but yet we're cut off from it because of people with a paranoia of rifles and stuff like that. And other states have preserved land here locally for sporting clubs. Why can't we get something like that
Well,
started?
let me answer your question this way. We have done remarkably well in the last 5 to 6 years, maybe 7, with respect to the bond issue and buying up land the state has. It's still open to, it's been open to all of the activities you speak about. It just so happens that there's not one in the immediate territory that you tell about right now.
Right,
exactly. But let me ask you this. Do you belong to the Penobscot Conservation Club?
Do I belong to
Yes,
them?
sir.
No,
Well, no. They have purchased a huge tract of land in the LaGrange area. Beautiful deer country.
Yeah, LaGrange is, yes.
And, they meet 8 times a year, take the summer off. These people are all hunters in the Maine. They're all hunters, and they're doing something about it. But public access is an enormous problem, and there's no way to answer that question.
It's kind of difficult because
It is.
a lot of us feel like we're out of staters in our own state.
Well,
a lot of the public land that's been bought up is far north. The anti-hunters were building in prime deer country. Where they habitat is, they're building.
I understand.
And they say, well, why don't you go north? There's
All right.
plenty area up there. Go north. Well, going north is 4 or 5 hours. I have to rent a hunting lodge. I have to take a week off from, we don't get Sundays to hunt. You get Saturdays. So you got to take the week off. You got to get a hunting lodge.
I got to move on. The questions are piling up. Thanks much, and you have a problem. We admit it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, your question, Bangor.
Yes, I have a simple question.
Simple question.
Are
It's not
there
on coyotes. It's not on number of trout. What is it?
Well, I've been reading 2 books this winter by William Converse Kendall.
Yes, sir.
And I was curious if there were any more blueback trout in Maine.
Yes, sir. I can answer that one. First blueback was taken in modern times after they were declared extinct in the Rangeley part of the world, and that's probably in the Kimball book. Were taken at Wadley Pond. We now have at least a dozen ponds where the bluebacks are still there, but not in great numbers. But you can indeed catch a blueback.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
We used to have them at our first place.
Yes,
up
yes.
in the Red River country.
That's right. Okay, your question. Where are you calling from? Hello?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I'm on hold.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right, you're on hold. I am half the time.
But I know you fellas can answer this, but I don't know. Up past Bangor, Penobscot River, the Atlantic salmon are right about now, correct? Why is it that down at around Duck Trap, down near Lincolnville, why is it they come down there around August or September? Do you know?
Oh, boy. I mean, I'm sure that Mr. Mills here, to my left, could tell you that, for example, fish in the Miramichi, why is it they don't move into canes until later in the year?
Who knows for sure?
Who knows for sure?
Generally, I know what people talk about on the Miramichi is that The later runs of fish stay in the lower ends of the rivers. In the Canes, it's possible that the fish are genetically adapted to the fact that the high water comes in the fall, and thus there's a greater chance of getting up the tributaries like that. I don't know the situation here, but our experience in New Brunswick is that your early runs go to the headwaters of a lot of the rivers, and your later runs will not go up so far, or the majority of them will not go up so far. But it's genetics of some kind.
That's right. At the risk of taking up a little time, I want to tell you a quick story. I have a great friend, a good friend, and an old guide on the Kedgwick River. His name is Ollie Moores. Each and every year, for years now, Ollie Moores and I have had a running conversation because he maintains there's a time of the year when a fish called the bluebacks, meaning Atlantic salmon, come into the Kedgwick River. Now, they must come up the big Restigouche River. And I'm always kidding Molly, this little stream called the Kedgwick, these fish come up the river, and the leader of the group with the bluebacks said, "Oop, stop right here, bear left," and come up the river. He vows this happens each and every year. I've never caught one of his bluebacks, and I've fished with him many hours. But the same question this, Ollie maintains you can't catch bluebacks anywhere except in the Kedgwick. So if you're looking on tonight from Campbellton, I still don't believe you. Where's this? Aroostook County. What part of Aroostook County?
Presque Isle.
Presque Isle. Nice city.
Yes, it is.
Your question.
What was that? Okay. I was wondering if you could tell me anything about the bear stamp.
About the what?
The bear stamp?
The bear stamp.
Yeah,
Ooh. What do you want to know about it?
I was wondering how long they plan to carry that.
Oh.
And if they ever plan to do away with it.
Well, all I can tell you, the history of the Fish and Game Department, once they get the foot in the door, the stamp is there, and you and I will have no hair. I've got very little now, but by the time they take it off, we'll be a couple of old turkeys.
Well, I'll be in a wheelchair.
You'll be in a, I hope not.
I was also going to ask you about a trout stamp. Were they planning on coming out with one of those?
Well, there's a lot of conversation about that. But
do you think it'd be worth it, or?
Do I think it would be worth it?
Yeah.
No.
You don't?
No. I mean, look, we're paying already.
That's right. Paying
enough for a license right now.
Yeah, you're right there.
I say just use a little enterprise, a little more innovation, and let's have muskellunge in certain places. Let's have pike. They have them in other states. Half our people are going on Lake Ontario.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're going up to northern New York for the hundreds.
But can you blame them?
No, because they get the fishing and we don't.
No.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get wound up, but that's the way I feel about it.
That's okay. I don't blame you a bit. I was wondering also about what would the maximum splake weigh, anyways?
Splake?
Yep.
Oh boy, if you've got a splake that's a cross between a togue and a brook trout.
Could be anything.
It could be anything. Even if you
9
get,
pounds, 10 pounds?
you get a 9 or 10 pounder,
Okay.
but more in the area of 3 to 4 pounds, I would say.
I was wondering, they just stocked the lake up here.
On splake,
Yep.
it's good
I think
fish.
They put 10,000 in one.
That's good fish. What lake they put them in?
Squapan Lake.
Squapan? Good, good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We got the next caller.
Okay.
Hello. Come in with your call.
Yes, but question is on the coyotes on Mount Desert Island. The University of Maine is paying $80 for people catching the coyotes on Mount Desert Island during trapping season, and then letting them go. I think this is completely wrong with spending the University of Maine's money that way.
Well, that's the Wildlife Department. They want them for study purposes, I'm sure. And why do you think it's completely wrong?
Because they just letting them go. They put a collar on them.
That's right.
And then turn around, someone else gets them and kills them. We've got a problem with coyotes on the island here, and I think that they should be killed off, some of them, not spend the University of Maine's money on them.
What kind of a war would you start at Mount Desert Island if you started shooting and killing off coyotes?
I don't say they can shoot them up, but those that's trapped, do away with them. And
How many do you think they will trap?
I couldn't tell you how many trapped, but I do know that they're paying $80 each for them.
One of the reasons for the high price is because they're very difficult to trap. That's a tough animal to get in a trap. But anyway, you made your point, and I'm sure there are listeners out there in a position to do something about it. We got another question. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Moncton.
From Moncton?
But I'm originally from Camilton. I hear you talking from Camilton just a minute ago.
Yes, nice town.
Well, I might add to something to the coyote, too. I usually
We're in a coyote bin. It's the fishing season. But go ahead.
Well, it's been bothering me. I hunt in the Riley Brook area and Plaster Rock, that area.
Okay.
And as you know, in the Northern province of New Brunswick, the deer population is quite low right now. And they're blaming a lot on coyotes, and I know there's a coyote problem. But there's something I've seen last fall that I think people should start being smarter about it. We've heard about 40 deer being shot, and most of them were does and fawn and just left there. There was 3 of them that I know of were shot from off the road, and they were almost falling one on top of the other. I mean, and the shells were about maybe 50 yards away. They didn't even check if they were dead or alive. Now, if they want to do something about the deer population, they might start helping themselves.
How much of this is fact or just conversation?
Well, we were speaking to some of the wardens back there, and we were telling them what we seen. And they
What
said,
did the
well,
warden say?
The warden said, well, that in about the last 2 weeks, it's about 40 that we've came notice to.
The wardens have said this to you?
Yes. So, I mean, that's quite bad. And, I mean, we've been tripping over does all over the place. We'll come up to, in a week, between 5 or 6 of us, see maybe 5 or 6 does just laying there being shot and, not reported.
That's sick.
I know it.
I can't believe that the wardens, the Mounties up there, couldn't apprehend these rascals.
And, most of us have an idea who they are because you have the same bunch hanging around. But it's to be able to put your hands on them, and to be able to do that, you'd have to see them doing it.
Okay, you made your point. We got a bunch of questioners. Okay. All right, Brewer, come in with your question.
Yes, this is for you, Bud.
This is for me.
Yes. Obviously, since you know Chris and Peter both, and Chris is in the area, and you obviously had a chance to have her on the show, why wouldn't you have picked Chris to be on the show and not Peter?
Well, I didn't want to...
I want to know who's calling
This is... I got one for you, too, Peter.
I don't want to upstage Peter by bringing Chris in. She's a show by herself.
Oh, beautiful answer. And one quick question for Peter.
All right.
On June 7th, would she be available to cook for me at Duck Lake, Peter?
Well, the way you've built her up now, I don't see how she can say no. Obviously, I better stay back at the lodge a little more often.
Enough of you, bro. We're going to Sebec Lake. Come in with your question.
Yes, this is your opinion.
My opinion.
Last year, I went to Quebec for the first time and had the time of my life up on Lake Mistassini and Lake Crotay.
Yes, sir.
In 3-4 pound trout, walleye.
Now, wait a minute. Not in Mistassini. How big were they?
Pardon?
How big were they in Mistassini?
3 and 4 pounds. I have a friend that caught one there was slightly over 5.
All right, that's good fish.
And all the walleye you want, and good pike fishing.
That's right. I've fished it.
Why, in your opinion, why can't we have that kind of fish here in the state of Maine? They coexist up there. Why can't they here?
I just threw that out a while ago. Let's do something about the fishing. Let's bring in pike. Let's bring in muskies.
Well, how do we start that?
Well, we're making a little noise tonight, and I've got every biologist in Maine upset right now.
Well, I'm very glad. I'm very glad, and you've got my vote on it because I'd love to.
You don't have to answer my telephone, do you? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Your question.
Yes, Ralph.
Come in. Who? Ralph. Somebody knows me.
I'd like to know, I saw your picture in the Bangor Daily News the other day with your brown and white saddle shoes on with Lee Trevino, and I'd like to know what your handicap is. And number 2 question, if you could give me your estimation on what's happening to the white perch and moosehead.
Well, You saw my picture in there with Trevino. I was down there for a week with him, and remarkable man, great fella. And I'm glad you noticed the shoes. They're about 10 years old, and I still wear white bucks even at my age. But anyway, about the perch in Moosehead Lake, well, they caught some through the ice this year. There have been various reports at different places, Duck Cove, the mouth of Roach River, Spencer Bay, all along the area up there. They're in there, and there's no question about it. Listen, we got a couple of minutes. We'll take one more question. All right, come in with your question.
Hi, this is Zach Thompson from Limestone.
Yes, sir, Art.
Say hi to Pete.
Hi, Art. How you doing?
Does anybody not know him out there? Go ahead.
Just wanted to know whether you folks admitted whether there was mountain lions or cougars. Fritzy and I had one grease across the interstate in front of us last fall.
Who did?
His wife.
My wife
Fritzy.
and I.
Oh, you did? A
They're
mountain
out there.
lion?
They're out there. My father was a guide for years, and he swears that the tail was long, Art, and it was not a bobcat, and it was a mountain lion up in the Red River country, and I have to believe him.
Alex.
And a lot of people have had claims on it. Maybe, I don't know about New Brunswick.
Oh, I'm a believer.
You're a believer too.
You're a believer too?
Absolutely.
That's the second one I've seen. I saw one up in Red River country.
Well, I don't know
with my
about two, Art. You might have seen one. Now, wait a minute here.
Two. Two, Pete.
All I can tell you that my friend Gene Letourneau of the Gannett newspapers, who's in the mid-80s in his life, writes 7 columns a week. Myself, we've written reams about sightings of mountain lions. Nobody has ever taken a picture of one. Nobody has wrongfully shot one. And I'm among the doubters.
Oh, that's too bad.
Well, that's all right. That's all right.
There might be a Bigfoot too, Art, right?
Well,
there could be a Bigfoot out there.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's catch one for him, Pete.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, all this evidence for years, I'll bet Gene has written 100 columns. I'll bet I've written at least 50 about mountain lions. I've got a file at my house on mountain lions that thick. And from Vassalboro all the way up to Emden, all the way, well, generally statewide. But nobody has ever taken one on the with the lens of a camera yet. Listen, Alex, appreciate you coming down.
Thank you, bud. My pleasure.
We've, I'm sorry we got into conversation here about coyotes, but he started the thing, see?
But I'd like to mention one thing. I'll be real quick. We have 50 sporting camps in our group now, and I know that all of them wanted me to say to you, thank you for years and years of support of the sporting camp industry. And the one gesture that we have for somebody is not a trophy, it's just a shake of the hand. And I want people to know that he has been a great supporter of our industry for years, and we all appreciate it.
Alex, I want to shake your hand. You run good camps
We can
compared
certainly
to...
echo that in New Brunswick, bud. Thank you.
Well, listen, it's been a joy having you fellas here tonight, and we have gone off the path. We were going to talk fishing, province of New Brunswick and in the state of Maine, changing regulations and everything attendant to it. But it's been kind of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed you two gentlemen here, and hopefully we can do it again. Maybe we can get Vicky down here sometime, and maybe Chris, and I'd love to have them do a parting shot of both of you. Thank you very much, and good night, everyone.